Hello everyone, TLM Ryan here at Pre-Conciliar Radio. Today we are going to talk about how to understand and dissect the crisis in the church, come to a calm resolution that puts you on a right mental footing to proceed and be Catholic. I think it's a very pertinent topic, not just because of a particular YouTube video that's been circulating. I think that YouTube video is what has been on everybody's mind at certain points in time. Before we get started, though, I do always like to share one comment that I've selected from my last video. Let's put this up. Last video was about the SSPX holding their ground. The winner is Laserface23. He says, by the excommunications of our clergy, are your traditional communities kept safe? Love me some Lord of the Rings, love Boromir. Good job, Laserface. Okay, so let's get started here. As my thumbnail shows, if you haven't seen that movie, by the way, We Were Soldiers, it is a speech given by Mel Gibson, who is portraying a traditional Catholic at the time of the Vietnam War. He is addressing his troops before they go into Vietnam. It is one of the first, I believe it is actually the first battle of American soldiers versus Viet Cong, North Vietnamese. It used to be that they were in an advisory role. This is where things really ramped up. And Mel Gibson gives a speech where he starts off by saying, let us understand the situation. And he tells his men that not all of us will come back. It's a hazardous situation. I chose that thumbnail because I think many Catholics, particularly young converts, I know I'm speaking from personal experience here, they come into the church maybe not quite thinking it's as strong as it was in the high Middle Ages, but they think, you know, there's some problems, but people are making mountains out of molehills, when in fact, there are actual mountains. So what do we need to do? We need to set clear expectations. That's one of the worst things you can ever do to someone, whether they're a convert, a client, a child, is get their hopes up or sell them a false bill of goods. We need to be realistic. We need to manage our expectations. So first I want to say it's okay to be quote unquote hurt right now or confused. Obviously the elephant in the room is the video that Nick put out. But if you watched Anthony Stein's video on the SSPX, he typically does two videos. He did a third one because they had released that bombshell of a letter a couple days ago. He said that even Anthony Stein said he was on the phone with a friend discussing how to handle this crisis. All of my friends in my parish have gone through similar doubts. Sometimes I'll be driving down the road. I'll have doubts. This is totally normal. It's nothing to be ashamed of. But we need to address it. And I think my goal with this video is to hopefully get people to understand the situation, which quite honestly, when you can see through the situation, you're less confused. It makes things, in my opinion, easier. So, okay, where do we need to level set? I think we should think about this in terms of years, in terms of where the church was and how strong it was over the centuries. This is not the year 500 AD, where the church is reigning over the ashes of fallen Rome. It is not 1050 AD. It's not 1500 AD. It's not even 1950 AD. Okay, we are more alike the Christians of 126 AD than we are, sitting here in 2026. Meaning we need to shift back to a very small, persecuted mindset. That's what it is. think a lot of people come into the church and they think that it's going to be some diluted version of, say, the 1600s. It's not. Things are bad. In fact, I would confidently say this is the worst crisis the church has ever been in. But the church has faced many of such crises. So we're not in unparalleled territory in that there's never been a crisis before, but this crisis is unique. So just know that things aren't normal. And there's been times where things haven't been normal in the church. So some of the statistics that Nick put out are true. I want to talk about those real quick, but they're not as bad as they seem. So he stated that 95% of Catholics approve of contraception and want the church to change their teaching on that. 86% of Catholics approve of James Martin type marriages. 64% believe killing the most vulnerable in the womb. And 70% said it was okay to engage in premarital relations. The thing with those statistics is that it comes from whenever you just identify as Catholic. So you go a survey, a pollster comes around and says, do you identify as Catholic? We already know that tons of people will say, yes, I identify as Catholic, but they've not been to Mass in like 2 years. Okay, so take that with a grain of salt. The Catholics I'm most concerned with are the ones that at least attend weekly. Okay, they're at least not lukewarm on that. I mean, that's a real basic minimum. So the numbers get better when you look at that population. Okay, and that's the population that you're going to be interacting with. That's the population that donates to parishes. That's the population that counts. Sure, if there's ones who have fallen away, we want them to come back and not have these views. But don't think that these numbers represent every Catholic you see at Sunday Mass. So that's a slight bit of encouragement. I don't have the numbers offhand of what that would be, but it's certainly going to be lower than those abysmal statistics. But that's still a problem. I'm not trying to sugarcoat it. Okay, so with all of that, with all the confusion, with the changing of the way the popes have been speaking, with the changing of the magisterium, all of these things, is it over? Did we join the wrong church? As I'm speaking as a convert, were we born into the wrong church if we're a cradle? Should we look at Eastern Orthodox? Or were we explicitly and repeatedly over and over and over warned about this by divine, private, but approved revelation? And the answer to that is absolutely. I'm going to start. Now, here's the thing you have to understand about Marian apparitions. Marian apparitions are not a thing that occurred all throughout church history. They first begin after the Protestant revolt. I don't know why that is. It's a very curious thing, but that's historically when these things begin to crop up. And I think what you're going to see, because I'm going to run through them all, they all talk about the same stuff. So for some reason, for 400 years, we were being warned about what we're experiencing today. And that is some comfort. That means that someone upstairs wanted to give us some hope during immensely confusing times. So first, let's talk about the time frame. If we're getting all of these warnings, what are these warnings pertaining to in terms of time period? Was it contemporary warnings? In some cases. But they all talk of future issues. And when in the future would those issues crop up? So we're going to go to one of the first ones that occurred. Besides Our Lady of Guadalupe, which was a very localized type apparition, in terms of future apparitions, one of the first ones is Our Lady of Good Success. Our Lady of Good Success, I've heard it's a mistranslation, but I'm just going to use that term for sake of brevity right now. Okay? So I'm just going to read a brief bit of the message from Our Lady of Good Success. By the way, this was in the 1600s. So if you're wondering, oh, is this apparition simply getting lucky with their predictions? They are predicting things that occurred 400 years after this. Virtually impossible. And you'll see here, the specificity makes it impossible that this would have been just a lucky guess. Okay, so quote, "The first significance is that at the end of the 19th century and into the 20th century, various heresies will be propagated. As these heresies spread and dominate, the precious light of faith will be extinguished in souls. by the almost total corruption of morals. During this period, there will be great physical and moral calamities, both public and private. I believe somewhere else that she also speaks very specifically. I've highlighted this obviously in preparation for the show, and I've lost where it is. But the message also gets very specific about the 20th century. It says, in the latter half of the 20th century, the passions will erupt. Passions meaning the things that drive us to temptation and sin. That is absolutely true. Everybody that you ever talk about, if you're arguing about, let's say, the Second Vatican Council, was the council good? Was it bad? Did it create the crisis? The people who want to defend the council will always point out that, oh, but during that time, everything went haywire in the culture. So, lest you think these Marian apparitions aren't dead on, she specified the exact century and the exact portion of the century when things would go nuts. So, we have a crisis in the church. It was predicted to a T, time-wise. Okay, so we've set the parameters here. We have a time block. Let's go on to another mystical vision. This is from Blessed Catherine Emmerich in 1820 AD. What does she have to say? Quote, I saw a strange church being built against all the rules. There were no angels supervising the construction work. In the church, nothing came from above. There was only division and chaos. It is probably a human-made church following the latest fashion. I saw deplorable things. They were gambling, drinking, and talking in church. They were also courting women. All sorts of abominations were being perpetrated there. The priests permitted everything and said Mass with great irreverence. I saw that few of them were still pious, and only a few had a sane view of things. All these things caused great sadness. Then I saw that everything related to Protestantism was gradually gaining the upper hand, and the Catholic religion was falling into complete decadence. Most of the priests were attracted by the seductive but false doctrines of young teachers, and all of them contributed to the work of destruction. In those days, the faith will fall very low and will be preserved only in a few places, in a few homes, and in a few families that God protected from disasters and wars. They were building a large, strange, and extravagant church. Everyone had to be admitted into this church to be united and have equal rights. Evangelicals, Catholics, and sects or religions of every denomination. If that doesn't sound exactly what you're living through right now, I don't know what is. That was in 1820, okay? So again, these things sound bad, but the fact that we are constantly being warned should be encouragement. Because let me tell you, if you go to like the Anglicans, and they've fallen completely, they've gone insane-o. They don't have the Mother of our Lord warning them that would happen. The Mother of our Lord only talks to Catholics. That's an encouraging sign. Okay, let's go on. We've got a ton more. Okay, and you're going to see this is just a consistent theme. Our Lady of La Salette in 1846 AD. Let me pull this up. Oh, did I lose my place here? Give me 1 second, guys. I thought I had it. She's very apocalyptic. Here we go. She says that the church will be in eclipse and the world will be in dismay. Okay, you're going to start seeing, as we shift closer and closer to the crisis period, that notions of a false church, a fake church, a church in eclipse, an ape of the church, these things start getting warned about. Okay, I think she also had something else to say here. It's very apocalyptic, but you can pick out. I mean, she talks of wars that are coming and things like that, which obviously this is very predictive of the Great Wars. I thought there was one other thing in here, but for sake of time, we're going to move on. She says, Rome will lose the faith. Here it is. Rome will lose the faith and become the seat of the Antichrist. Now, what that means, who knows? Because, Rome is supposed to always at least have some semblance of the faith. Otherwise, the gates of hell would have prevailed. These aren't, flowery, the church triumphs type visions, guys. And that's very telling, because if you look into different cults and different sects, whether it's evangelicals on TV or Mormons, even the Saracen religion, wink, wink, they always have these visions that they're the best and they're always going to win and they are always going to defeat the enemy. It's very telling that our visions talk of an impending disaster. That's partially how you know it's true and it's not full of crap. Okay, so that was Our Lady of La Salette. Let's get into Fatima. Everybody's talked about Fatima. We all know about it. But Pius XII, when he was a cardinal, before he was pope, he had discussions with Sister Lucia. Sister Lucia was the oldest of the children, the one who received most of the secrets that Our Lady decided to give to her. Everybody knows the first two. But the third one, obviously, was infamously covered up in the 1960s. She was told to give it to the Pope, and in 1960, he was to open it. Pope John the 23rd opened it, closed it, didn't release it, and said, "These are not for our times." What's curious about that year, 1960, is exactly what Our Lady of Good Success said. It is the latter half of the 20th century. And then what happened? The Second Vatican Council and the passions erupted. What was it that the future Pius XII had discussed with Sister Lucia that may give us a hint to what was in that third secret? I'll read it to you. It was from Cardinal Pacelli. That was his name before he became Pope Pius XII. He said, quote, "I am worried by the Blessed Virgin's message to Lucy of Fatima. The persistence of Mary about the dangers with which menace the Church is a divine warning against the suicide of altering the faith in her liturgy, her theology, and her soul. I hear all around me innovators who wish to dismantle the sacred chapel, destroy the universal flame of the Church, reject her ornaments, and make her feel remorse for her historical past. If you've ever spent any time in Catholic school, that is all they do. They make you feel remorse for the Catholic Church and her past." Let's get to a couple comments. Eerily accurate, yes. This is why I've synthesized all of these, because they're all pointing to what we're experiencing. Let's go to the next one. Got two more, and then we're going to talk a bit. Padre Pio. What did Padre Pio say? Padre Pio in 1960. Oh, there's that year again. "It is Satan who has been introduced into the bosom of the Church, and within a very short time will come to rule a false church." Let's fast forward to 1973. Our Lady of Akita, or Akita. "The work of the devil will infiltrate even into the Church in such a way that one will see cardinals opposing cardinals, bishops against bishops. The priests who venerate me will be scorned and opposed by their confreres, churches and altars sacked. The Church will be full of those who accept compromise, and the demon will press many priests and consecrated souls to leave the service of our Lord. The demon will be especially implacable against souls consecrated to God. The thought of the loss of so many souls is the cause of my sorrow. We know statistically that those who entered into monasteries and religious life were the most decimated by this council." Okay, So I think I've done a pretty good job of explaining that this was predicted over and over and over and over for 400 years. So while these times are tough, while nobody who heard those back then would have wished to live in our times, these are the times we're in. The timeline has been set. It was accurately fulfilled. Everything that these mystics and Our Lady said would happen are happening. A lot of people always want to know what's in the third secret of Fatima. I say just look around. You've got a front row ticket to the show. So while that sucks, it's also not any sign to leave. It's actually a sign to stay, because when these things are fulfilled, it shows that this is the true church. Again, Mary only talks to us. I tell my Eastern Orthodox friend that all the time. He gets very upset with me, but it's the truth. Okay, so then what do we do about this? I mean, the first thing that I took 20 minutes to get to is to say, basically, don't panic. You have nothing to fear. And the reason is that Our Lady has been giving us gentle guidance and gentle warnings for 400 years. She cares enough to give you those so that you'll be able to recognize the times you're in. If we didn't have those, I don't know how confident people could be. Okay. So what do we do? Let's take a page out of the modernist playbook. The modernists didn't just come in, as my opinion, of course. I think some sedevacantists would disagree, but I don't think the modernists just came in and flipped everything overnight. I mean, we see that. Even if you have issues with John the 23rd and Paul the 6th, things were not nearly as bad then as they are now. This was a slow roll. They played their cards well and smart. They changed the practice of the church. And as people started practicing incorrectly, then their faith fell away as well. We need to do the same, okay? My channel is called Pre-Conciliar Radio. I practice, for the most part, I think almost entirely, pre-conciliar practices. That's what you should be doing if you can. I understand people are in difficult situations. I also understand, and I've talked to many people who choose to practice post-conciliar when they have pre-conciliar options. Very regularized, non-controversial pre-conciliar options. I urge you to reconsider that. Your children are owed it. The retention rates in the post-conciliar churches are abysmal. 30% at best remain Catholic. It is completely the opposite in the post-conciliar diocesan parishes, SSPX, FSSP, etc. Start practicing the faith the way the saints would have recognized it. The faith will return when we practice that way. Practice first, the faith will return. Let's not create a two-front war, okay? With the whole SSPX drama going on, I see a bunch of critiques from modernists, as you would expect. As traditionalists, let's not needle them to death. And I'm talking, if you're a hermeneutic of continuity and you think that they're going to go into schism, why don't you just sit back and chill out? And same with the sedevacantists. Okay, I understand that you guys always want to take a chance and remind the SSPX they need to be obedient and blah, 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 blah. Well, maybe a crisis that's been warned about for 400 years and is immensely confusing and has sprouted up a billion different potential solutions to it. And for 60 years, we've been talking about it, and nobody has really gotten a real ironclad answer, and everybody still seems confused. Why don't we not attack each other and first deal with the modernists who made us have to come up with all of these uncomfortable scenarios and theories? If we start these two-front wars where the SSPX is battling the FSSP or the sedes are battling with the diocesan, that's what they want. The devil and the modernists want us attacking each other. And quite honestly, when I'm on Twitter, all I see are sedevacantists, SSPX, hermeneutic of continuity types at each other's throats. And meanwhile, you've got James Martin dancing around doing another spontaneous blessing. So knock it off, quite honestly. We can call a council and figure out if there's really a pope after we've dealt with whoever these guys are. No two-front wars. Every country that has two-front wars, they always lose. Napoleon, Mustache Boy, they lose those wars. We need to maintain the line of inheritance. You think about this from a like a monarchy. Your family has inherited this faith. My family, uh, they were English, Irish, and Italian. Italian on my mom's side, English, Irish on my father's side. Both parents lapsed after the council. Both of those lineages are likely Roman Empire jurisdictions, meaning I might have lost out on inheritance that's 1700 plus years old. Okay. I've got it back. I want to pass it on to my children. This kind of goes to the other point I was talking about. Pre-conciliar practices. Okay. We're hanging on by a thread here in some cases. Practice pre-conciliar Catholicism to give your children the best shot to keep that inheritance going. It's the greatest inheritance you can ever have. Pray to Saint Peter Damian. I just learned about him. He was called Monitor of the Popes. Popes trusted him quite a bit. I know we have issues with our last two popes in particular. Some sedevacantists have issues with other popes as well. Pray to him for clarity. I'm going to start doing it. I learned a lot about him. He's very fascinating. This one, so I want to address Nick directly here. Again, I wasn't trying to make this video about him. It's not. I think his video was needed. People have been feeling that way, and he was just the one, I guess, who put it out publicly. But I do want to address Nick here specifically. So, Nick, if you're watching this, I don't think you're going to get a satisfactory intellectual answer to this. I think this is going to require some divine intervention. So do your, I know that's what you're looking for. I have my own theories. It's that I can't do it here. I would say practice the faith the way it was practiced first. I think the intellectual comfortability will come to you potentially later, but you might not. Again, we've been arguing about this for 60 years, so it might not happen, and we may need divine intervention to get clarity. Also, please just start going to the SSPX. That's my one solid piece of advice to you. You should not have to have Mass in the hall outside of the sanctuary. That is so insulting. You and all the traditional parishioners at wherever you go have basic dignity as traditional Catholics, and you ought not to be treated that way. And you should take all of your tithing money and go over to the SSPX. I know you don't have a problem doing that. Just do it. It's going to be so much better for your mental health. SSPX people, they don't have to worry about all this crap. Yes, maybe on the intellectual side, you got to work out some theories, supply jurisdiction. I think practice, again, should be put first. So, Nick, if you're listening, stop taking it from that bishop over there. Just go to the SSPX. Okay, now I got a quick message for converts, and then we're going to get to comments. By the way, I did just monetize this. So if you do send in a super chat, all super chats will be donated to traditional Catholic groups. I will not keep any of it, but I don't know if it's working yet because I just set it up today, but we'll get to some comments in a second. So to converts, if you hear about all of this, you're like, why would I want to join this shit show? A lot of converts they hate the world. They hate all the confusion in the world. So they look to the Catholic Church, 2,000 years of unchanged teaching. This is attractive. And then they find out that the last few popes have been trying to, I don't think that they've met the standard to have actually changed teaching, but I think they're pushing up as close as they can to it to make you think that the teachings could change. It's my personal view. But in any event, the optics are awful recently. So what should you do? Well, first understand that the saints lived for these times. They knew of these great and trying times, and many of the saints wished to have seen it. It's where some of the greatest saints will be made, and I'll get to that in a second. Christ foretells of it, the great apostasy. How could the great apostasy look? I've done all the statistics. When you practice pre-conciliar Catholicism, all you do is grow. How could you have a great apostasy if we weren't attacked from within? It was unassailable. So this almost had to happen for that to occur. And I'm not saying that we're like in end times or something. Maybe it's pre-chastisement. I'm just saying it was going to happen at some point. Let me go. I want to read something. This is something my best friend often cites this to me, and I want to read it to people. It's from Saint Anthony the Great. Saint Anthony the Great told a vision that he experienced to one of his spiritual sons. In the vision, he saw a great valley between two cliffs. The cliffs represented earth and heaven, and the valley, the great abyss of perdition. He saw the monks of his time soar over the valley easily with the wings of angels. After this, he saw the subsequent generation of monastics flying over the valley on the wings of eagles. Next, he saw the monks of middle times fly over the abyss with man-made instruments. Finally, he envisioned the monks of the last times leaping over the valley with all sorts of cuts and wounds, barely able to make it over the edge of the cliff. His spiritual son asked him, "Abba, what does this mean?" Saint Anthony explained, "The monastics in our generation left the world behind and found the pearl of great price. Through many fervent works of asceticism and unceasing prayer, we acquired much grace and thereby soared into the gates of heaven. The generation after us will be similar, but less fervent, and thereby will acquire less grace, but still soar into paradise. The monks of middle times will not have our self-abandonment and ascetical discipline, but will achieve corporate works of mercy and will make it into Christ's kingdom with some trepidation. Finally, the Catholics in the last times will not be ascetic, nor will they have great works. But those who simply keep the faith while being exposed to and fighting the great temptations of their times will barely make it over the abyss. But take heed, my son, they will be considered greater than the previous generations in heaven because of the great evils they faced in their times." So, if you are at all discerning the Catholic faith, that means you've combed through all the muck and distractions and pleasures of this world, and this world offers pleasures like no other generation has ever experienced. So if you're considering it, but things look scary right now, just know you've made it this far, and that's really impressive. And then ride to the rescue. It's not boring in here, I'll tell you that. And you actually get to fight a battle, and you get to help reclaim the bride of Christ, which is under assault right now. You're joining an organization that's halfway through a great war. You're not joining it in peacetime, but there's lots to do, so you won't be bored. And what else do you have to do with your life? Play video games and pleasure yourself even more with the sins and temptations of the world? That gets so boring. That leads you to despair, not fighting the fight. And so, of course, to quote Pope Benedict, I would say, "The world will offer you comfort, but you were not made for comfort. You were made for greatness." So if you're a convert, potential convert, don't shy away from this. These are the times where the greatest saints will be made. Okay. So with that, I'm going to get to comments. I was trying to do a 20-minute one, but I guess I didn't really schedule my timeout great. So let me get to some of your comments. I don't want to forget anyone. Let's see. So this is about the Marian apparitions. They've increased since Luther, but there's definitely a Marian apparition prior to it. I'd have to look into that. But yeah, they're almost predominantly post-Luther. Someday. Yes, this is exactly what's happening. There's an ape. I'm an ape of the church adherent. I'm actually going to have Anthony Stein on if I can ever get. He's agreed to come on. We just got to work with his insane schedule, and we're going to talk ape of the church. I'm a huge subscriber to the ape of the church. Why? Because Vatican approved Marian apparitions say it's going to happen. Yes. How you worship God dictates what you believe and how you live your life. So focus on that first. Don't turn this into an intellectual. Protestants do that. Protestants intellectualize too much. Act and God will act, to quote St. Joan of Arc. Let's see. I hadn't read this, so I agree 100%. Trad's best chance of being heard as loud as possible if we can unite. I think unite on the 90%. Yeah, look, if you're a set of a contest and you have an issue with the SSPX because they don't agree on your papal position, we got to let bygones be bygones for a sec. Just for a sec. I know you guys love to do it, but it gives the modernists way too much advantage. It really, like, if I'm a modernist, I'm thrilled. And I'm not saying, I've said, by the way, this is not just to pick on sedes, because I've said the exact, when I've been on sede channels, I tell non-sedes, don't pick on them either. Pick on the people who made the chance that there could be a vacancy actually make some sense. Okay, so don't get mad at the wrong people. Understand who your real enemy is. This is probably what's going to happen. I don't really think that we're going to get out of this through natural ways, but we should continue to do our duty until such time. What if the closest SPX is 3 hours away, only Latin mass around instead of a contest? That's probably a personal decision. I'm not a set of a contest. I've not given thought into that, like, that position. I'm not in that situation, so I haven't had to. I would say look into it, and it feels, honestly, I would go, and if you experience grace, continue to go, because the sacraments may be valid, etc. And if you don't go again. I'd say just try it. Act and God will act. I'm all about action. I really don't like, oh, I'm going to study this position and see if this is valid and I can do it for, 3 months before you actually do it. That's one thing I'll say. These times are so confusing. I think we're going to get a little bit of grace when it comes to gray areas. It's just my opinion. Now, I also have a video out there, like how to, something like how to react to a Latin Mass ban. You can check that out. I don't go into sedevacantism, but it might help you. Yeah, I don't know. That's a personal decision, and I'm not an expert on that at this point. Here we go. I have a Novus Ordo Latin Mass within 5 hours. Oh, I have no Latin Mass within 5 hours. I just nurture it in my home and heart and hope for a better future. Yeah, go check out my video on that. There may be secret underground ones you don't know about. I'll put it that way. Let's see. I think that's it for now. I want to keep this under 40 minutes, but I appreciate everybody who joined in. Appreciate your comments. I hope this was encouraging. Yeah, gray areas 100%. We have to just accept that we're in gray areas. We're in bad times. Okay? Do what you can. My understanding is observing a Sunday Mass is okay, but sacraments, you'd be excommunicating yourself. I don't know, one way or the other. I'm not the foremost expert on that, but I'm a lot more of a doer, not a thinker. That's not true, but again, I've studied the issue enough to know that it's hyper confusing. So yeah, we're in bad times, but she warned us over and over, and that means something. So don't despair, but don't feel bad for having these thoughts. Anyways, if anybody out there is feeling that way, a little run down, a little confused, hope this helped. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Until my next broadcast, God bless.